to the first video on indifference curves. We'll be looking at the difference between Hicksian and Slutsky, as well as going through a few diagrams and how to draw. So firstly, up on the screen you can see a diagram that we've drawn. You can see the red budget line, which basically shows you what quantity of goods you could purchase for the amount of income that you have. So on the x-axis you can see right down on the bottom, if we had no good y, we'd have that amount of good x. You then see a yellow line, which is our indifference curve, and anywhere along that tells us what sort of combinations that we would want or that we would accept. So when those two lines match and meet, the budget line is what we can afford, indifference curve is what we'd like. When those two meet, that's the combination that we'll go for. So yeah, difference between Hicksian and Slutsky. In Hicksian, our utility is kept the same, which differs from Slutsky, where the quantity of goods that we purchase is the thing that is held constant. Alright, we'll start with our first diagram though. We can see here on the x-axis we have apples, on the y is banana, and you can see our budget line BC1, our yellow indifference curve IC1, and point A is where those two meet at x1. So if the price of apples were to fall, therefore we could buy more of them, and price of bananas was held constant, you'd see the budget line shift outwards, and therefore we'd be able to purchase more apples. We then draw on our new indifference curve IC2, and draw a new line down to the quantity of apples we can now purchase, which is x3. The difference between x1 and x3 shows our total effect. But how do we work out the individual income and substitution effect? To work out the new effects, we need to draw a parallel budget line all the way down until it becomes tangent with our old indifference curve. And at that point, which is B on our diagram, that's the point where we draw a line down to x2. Now the difference between x1 and x2, that's the substitution effect, and x2 to x3 is our income effect, and the total effect is those two added together. So the diagram before showed you a Hicksian normal. Now looking at a Hicksian inferior good. So once again we do the exact same. We have a price of apples falling and price of bananas being held constant, so that budget line shifts outwards. We then draw on our new indifference curve IC2, write C there and bring that all the way down, make that x3. But the difference here is when you then bring that new budget line down to become tangent, point B is actually outside of C, which then means that our substitution effect, while being positive, is really large, and our income effect is actually going in the opposite direction. Finally, we're just going to look at a Hicksian Giffen good. So again, same parameters, prices of apples have fallen, price of bananas constant, budget line shifts out, draw our second indifference curve IC2, point that as C, but then when we bring our budget line back down now to become tangent with our original indifference curve, you see that point B is to the right of A, whereas point C is to the left. So you have a substitution effect and an income effect going in opposite directions as before. However, the income effect now outweighs the substitution effect. Now we're going to move on to Slutsky diagrams. So we're going to look at a normal Slutsky to start with. We have our price of apples falling, indifference curve goes to IC2, budget line goes out, same as we've seen before. However, this time when we bring our parallel budget line back, we don't put it tangent. We instead, when it goes through our original point, so in this case A, we then draw it on there. We then draw a third indifference curve on this new budget line, and for a normal good that would be in between IC1 and IC2, and therefore it gives you some values. We still have both substitution and income effect going in the same direction, with substitution effect being between x1 and x2 versus our income effect being between x2 and x3. Finally, we're going to look at a Slutsky inferior. However, in this case, the price of apples has actually risen. So our budget line actually goes in the opposite direction because we can't afford to buy as many apples. We draw on our IC2 on the new budget line, and then when we shift our budget line back and it goes through our original point, we draw on a new line. Once that new budget line is drawn, we pop a new point B on there, draw it down to our x-axis to work out the individual effects. In this case, you can see between x1 and x2 is our substitution effect, and between x2 and x3 is our income. However, again, they're both going in opposite directions, but in this case, unlike a Giffen good, the income effect does not outweigh the substitution effect. Thank you for watching my video on indifference curves.